We have this strange thing where the culture says nothing to you,
Right.
and it has no reason for what we're doing. I give the example at one point in the book of a wonderful French philosopher called Chantal del Sol, who has this terrific image of modern European, indeed Western man, as what she describes. She says we're like Icarus fallen. We're like Icarus would have been if he'd survived the fall. We in Europe try, in my explanation, we tried everything. We tried all the religious ideas, different interpretations of it. We tried all the political ideas. We dreamt these dreams in the 20th century, and they all collapsed, and it was all terrible. And we oughtn't to be here, and yet we are. And we are singed and bruised and looking up at the fall we just made, and we don't know what to do. And the only answer is the thing that most people do when all the ideas collapse, which is you have a nice time.
Right.
The problem is it just doesn't last very long because it can't sustain itself. There's nothing meaningful. And that, to your point about the convert thing, is that the Islam bit is so galvanizing and important and so worthy of our attention because it has a strong and assertive claim.
Right.
It makes, to my mind, ridiculous claims for itself and that are obviously wrong. But they're claims. They are claims about everything. And when people say in the West that they want to understand why people do it, you think, you've got to start from the understanding that these people are talking about everything.
Yeah.
Life, death, love, meaning, absolutely everything. And you, in return, are saying, well, we're going to reevaluate this bit of our counter-terrorism strategy or our inclusivity strategy to really, really mend that bit. And if you think, our Home Secretary did this again recently, Amber Rudd, and I said somewhere that, in the end, you've got to realize that Amber Rudd might tell you something, but Allah might have a different view.
Yeah.
Who are you going to go with, Amber Rudd or Allah?
Yeah.
I reckon most people will notice that the Home Secretary will probably be replaced in a few months' time and so on. They may just plump with what they regard as being the answer to absolutely everything.
Well, you propose a couple of ways in which this might be turned around, or this might go in the next few years. And you mentioned Michel Houellebecq's novel Submission, in which the protagonist makes an effort to come home to Christianity, and he can't do it.
Yes.
And you say, because, as you know, every village in Europe is centered around a church on a village green and all the rest of it, and you're not asking people to become necessarily believing Christians, but just to return to the cultural Christianity that was, the old joke about, when the Jehovah's Witness knock on your door, oh no, we're not religious here, mate, we're Church of England. That you know all the hymns, you recognize the biblical quotation, the things that were standard in Britain a generation ago.
Yes.
And on most of the continent, and we're along, even getting back to that.
Yes, I try to. I mean, some of the things I say in the book about slowing down the migration flow and all these things are sort of practical suggestions, but these are the ones. These ones are the ones
the
that
big
really matter.
existential things. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not asking people to be believing Christians. I'm not a believing Christian. But one of the things I say is that we are Christians anyway, whether we like it or not, and we're probably finding that out at the moment. I mean, where the hell do people think that human rights came from?
Yeah, right.
I mean, these are things that exist on the embers of Christian thought.
But you know as well as I do, Douglas, that there are a lot of people who say, well, I'm totally opposed to what Islam's doing, and then they say, I'm a secular, rational atheist.
No, they're a secular, rational Christian atheist.
Right.
They may not want to be, but they are.
Yeah.
They still dream Christian dreams.
Yeah.
They still have Christian thoughts and impulses. They don't actually behave as they would if they had no baggage at all. But this is this is one of the most important things, is what is our attitude towards this past? There's a passage in the book where I mention is what is our attitude to these buildings in our midst? Are they embarrassments? Are they something we think we return to in times of trouble? And one of the few things, this is, as it were, too deep to be picked up by the sort of average Guardian reviewer, who I was somewhat lambasted by, as if this was as if it was, this classic. There's a classic thing about the shallowness of our time, where whenever you mention anything important,
right,
it's like, oh, what are you going on about that for? This goes back to the thing about the migration. Why didn't you join us in talking about this boring by-election prediction?
Right. The sort of present tense hamster wheel is all that matters.
But this attitude, what our attitudes towards our past is, matters, and warring on it, I know, is not an answer. In fact, is part of our current catastrophe. Warring on our past includes the people who say, "I'm really against suicide bombers, and that's why we've got to close faith schools."
Right.
Or they go, I will criticize the crazy jihadi, but I also don't want bishops in the House of Lords.
No.
And I mean, apart from being a total waste of your energies and time, it's also just obviously positioning. I'm just showing I'm really even-handed in this. It's also that Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, is one of the sort of central figures of this book in a way, because we should take seriously several of the very straightforward things he urged. And one of them was, he said, he at one point urged and persuaded the late Oriana Fallaci, who was an atheist, of this. He said to behave as though God exists. And he also made what I think of as being one of the key insights, because one of the reasons why people war on their origins in Europe is, apart from the positioning and all that sort of thing, is because they think that it's about the philosophy and the reason and the science or the religion.
Right.
And I say at one point in the book that we should recognize, for instance, I say, look, the churches have given up claims. Benedict did it himself in the encyclical. They've given up the claim to legislate. Okay, there are parts of the world where that's not the case, but in modern Europe, the churches basically have no legislative power and have, by their own admission, said they don't want it. So as long as they cannot impose their beliefs on a non-believer or someone who doesn't believe this, the argument about the position of religion to that extent in the moral sphere has been sorted out. But there's something that the non-religious then have to do, which is, and I think this is a quid pro quo, which is to concede that in matters like issues to do with life and meaning, the churches have a voice. They've thought about this. I mean, one of the great things I discover on campuses sometimes is people are like, oh, we don't want any X telling us about, we don't want that bishop telling us about, procreation.
Right.
I think, well, it's possible that the church has thought about these matters. I mean, it may have even thought about them more than you have in your 18 years of life or whatever. And there's a whole set of issues with that case. It's almost as if we've said, anything that comes from our religious and philosophical tradition, by its nature, is of no interest to us.
Right.
Because we've got this great new idea. And of course, sadly, the great new idea is this St. George in retirement, as the late Ken Minogue described, syndrome, where the whole of life is a set of battles for rights, and you've slain the dragon, and now you stagger around the land looking for smaller and smaller dragons, till you're in the situation the left's in at the moment, where they're just standing, leering and waving a sword around at empty air. In recent years, I think that a certain moroseness has landed across Europe, among other things, because of a growing awareness that maybe what we have is very unusual, and that we have become disassociated from the roots from which what we enjoy grew. And this is a problem. There's a German legal theorist I quote in the book who puts this as one of the central conundrums for Europe. Is it possible that the thing we're enjoying and living through can survive without the connection to its roots? And I believe that the roots of the West and of Europe in particular are fairly clear, and it's a combination of things. It's the inheritance from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. It's obviously the inheritance of the Christian civilization that washed throughout the continent. and then the refining fire of the Enlightenments and skepticism and all these things. And of course, we could go on endlessly about the other things that have added to it, but broadly speaking, that is what made Europe Europe and what made a European a European. They breathed this air. But the sort of the last man at the end of that, which I fear modern Europeans are, is in this strange position of finding it hard to even identify where he and she has come from, let alone being able to return to those roots and nurture them. Because we all have, I have, I'm sure you have, a conflicted set of views about this. Mm-hmm. You know, is it necessary for other people to believe? Those of us who have sometimes been tempted to hope that, for instance, skepticism is enough.
Yeah.
Constantly depressed by the discovery that, for instance, somebody may be a free thinker about God, and that's it from the free thinking point of view.
Yeah.
From then on, it's tribe all the way, and you know, we're all living through this. But it's for Europe, I think that the combination of historically unprecedented movement of people into the continent, at the same time that this sort of breakdown of what we are ourselves is going on, is a fatal thing.